something strange started moving inside palace walls again, and this time it wasn't gossip from tabloids or whispers from royal commentators. It was a file, a single file, quietly delivered, quietly opened, and according to insiders, quietly passed across Prince William's desk. A file that reportedly contained new DNA evidence tied directly to Archie and Lilibet, the two children whose place inside the royal bloodline has been surrounded by questions, silence, and tension for years. The moment that envelope appeared, the calm that had settled over the monarchy cracked open again, because this wasn't just another rumor swirling around the Sussex drama. This was something that, if true, could drag one of the royal family's most sensitive disputes back into the spotlight.
Prince William, his own brother, after lobbying the hard left
in the UK. What will Buckingham Palace make of Harry's comments on that show?
It actually opens the door also to when William becomes king, quite reasonably stripping Harry of his title.
Prince William has always been known for one thing inside palace circles: he does not react quickly. He studies, he waits, and when he finally moves, the decision is usually final. But what insiders claim happened recently inside one of the private offices at Clarence House didn't look like patience. It looked like surprise. Because when the new report was allegedly placed in front of him, the room reportedly went quiet in a way that made even seasoned royal staff uneasy. According to those familiar with the situation, the documents weren't just another opinion piece or lab speculation circulating online. They were described as a secondary genetic review compiled by a European medical consultancy, and the results inside that file reportedly didn't match the conclusions everyone thought had already closed this chapter of the story. And that's the moment the entire Archie and Lilibet controversy supposedly came roaring back to life. For years, the official line around the Sussex children has remained steady. They are the son and daughter of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, born into the extended royal family, even if their parents stepped away from royal duties and relocated to California. But behind the public messaging, insiders have long hinted that the royal institution operates with a completely different level of scrutiny when it comes to lineage, titles, and succession rules. Because in the world of monarchy, bloodlines are not simply family matters. They are constitutional matters. They determine who stands where in a line that stretches back centuries. And that's why this alleged DNA update has reportedly rattled people inside the palace more than any tabloid rumor ever could. According to sources who claim knowledge of the situation, the new analysis was commissioned privately by a group of legal advisors who had been reviewing the ongoing disputes surrounding Archie and Lilibet's royal status. The goal, they say, wasn't to question paternity directly. Previous tests had already established that Prince Harry was the biological father, but to examine the broader biological records surrounding the children's births. And when that report was completed, the findings apparently created a problem nobody expected, because the new documentation reportedly didn't contradict the existing DNA results. Instead, it raised new questions about the chain of verification surrounding them, how the samples were collected, who supervised the testing, and whether the process followed the same historical standards that the royal household has traditionally required when confirming lineage for children close to the throne.
Sherry Tilden, Meghan's attorney, called it weaponized vulnerability, but the court could not ignore the request.
Now imagine the scene. A quiet office, heavy wooden furniture, a report lying open on the desk, and Prince William, the future king, staring down at pages that apparently suggested the controversy he thought had already been settled might not actually be finished. People close to the palace said the atmosphere around that moment shifted immediately, not because the evidence proved anything dramatic on its own, but because it reopened a door the monarchy had spent years trying to close. For William, the stakes of that door reopening are enormous. As the heir to the throne, he isn't just a brother dealing with family disagreements. He is the future guardian of an institution that has survived for more than 1,000 years by maintaining strict rules about lineage and legitimacy. But every royal birth has traditionally been witnessed, documented, and confirmed through a process designed to eliminate any doubt. It's why royal physicians historically attended births. It's why records were kept with obsessive detail. And it's why even small irregularities can trigger massive internal reviews. So when whispers started spreading that the new DNA review had flagged inconsistencies in documentation, palace officials reportedly did what they always do in situations like this. They started asking questions, quiet questions, careful questions, the kind that never reach the public until long after decisions have already been made. According to those following the situation closely, the file reportedly made its way to a small advisory group tasked with reviewing sensitive royal matters, a group composed of legal historians, constitutional advisors, and medical powerful consultants. Their assignment wasn't to decide anything immediately. Their job was to determine whether the new evidence required further investigation or whether it could be dismissed as incomplete speculation. And that's where things reportedly became even more complicated, because as the panel began examining the report, they apparently discovered something else buried in the documentation, references to a separate lab review conducted months earlier that had never been publicly discussed. That second review, according to the claims circulating among royal watchers, analyzed archived biological samples connected to the earlier test and produced slightly different statistical margins in the results. Not different enough to overturn the original conclusion, but different enough to raise eyebrows among the specialists reading the report. And suddenly the palace was facing a familiar problem again: uncertainty. For Prince William, that word carries enormous weight. The monarchy has always operated under a simple principle: uncertainty about royal lineage must be eliminated as quickly and decisively as possible. Because once doubt enters the system, it spreads through media speculation, through political debate, through public distrust. And insiders say that's exactly what William is trying to prevent now. While no official announcement has been made and the palace has refused to comment on the alleged new D9 report, people close to royal operations say discussions about how to handle the situation have already begun behind closed doors. Some advisors reportedly believe the matter should be resolved quietly through another independent verification process, one that follows the traditional protocols used in earlier generations. Others argue that reopening the issue at all could ignite a public firestorm that would damage the monarchy far more than leaving the situation alone. And just when it seemed like the palace might quietly bury the entire situation under layers of silence and protocol, something else reportedly happened behind those heavy stone walls that made insiders realize this story was far from finished. Because the moment the advisory panel began reviewing that new D9 report, the conversation inside royal circles shifted from curiosity to strategy. Suddenly, the question was no longer simply whether the evidence meant anything scientifically. The question became far more dangerous than that. What would happen if the existence of this report ever became public? The monarchy has always understood one brutal truth about modern media: once a royal controversy reaches the open air, it stops belonging to the palace and starts belonging to the world. And this particular controversy touches one of the most sensitive nerves the royal institution has ever faced: the legitimacy and recognition of children connected to the bloodline of the future king's brother. According to people who claim knowledge of the internal discussions, Prince William reportedly spent several hours reviewing the briefing summaries that accompanied the report. And those summaries didn't just describe laboratory margins or procedural irregularities. They also outlined the potential consequences if the palace decided to take the report seriously. Because verifying royal lineage is not as simple as repeating a lab test and issuing a statement. The process historically involves a formal chain of medical oversight, legal documentation, and institutional certification that has existed for centuries precisely to prevent situations like this from ever reaching a gray area. The moment those old rules are invoked, the situation stops being private family business and becomes a constitutional matter tied to royal titles, succession rights, and public trust in the monarchy itself. And that is why the decision William faces now is reportedly so complicated. If he dismisses the new report entirely, critics will say the palace ignored evidence to avoid embarrassment. But if he orders another verification process, the world will instantly interpret that move as proof that doubts existed all along. It is a lose-lose equation, and insiders say that is exactly why the palace has been moving so carefully over the last few weeks, consulting legal historians, medical experts, and constitutional advisors who understand the dangerous territory this story occupies. At the same time, there is another factor making the situation even more volatile: the distance between the two sides of the family. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been living in California for years now, building a completely separate life away from the royal institution, and that physical distance has slowly transformed their relationship with the monarchy into something that feels less like a family bond and more like two parallel worlds occasionally colliding through headlines. If another investigation were to be requested, it would almost certainly require cooperation from Harry's side, and that is where things could become emotionally explosive. Because from Harry's perspective, every new review might feel like another attempt to question the legitimacy of his children. For William, however, the calculation is different. As the future king, he has been trained his entire life to view personal discomfort as secondary to institutional institutional stability. The monarchy has survived wars, scandals, and political revolutions not by avoiding controversy, but by confronting it with rigid adherence to protocol whenever questions about the bloodline appear. And according to palace watchers, William understands that lesson perhaps better than anyone. What makes this alleged Dina development even more unsettling for royal observers is the timing. The monarchy is currently navigating a delicate transition period, with King Charles firmly on the throne but Prince William increasingly stepping into a larger leadership role. At moments like this, stability becomes the institution's most valuable asset. Anything that reopens old disputes or invites public speculation about royal succession carries the potential to weaken that stability, even if the underlying evidence ultimately proves harmless. That is why the palace has reportedly been working to keep every discussion about the new report strictly confined to a small inner circle. No official records, no public briefings, just a handful of trusted advisors examining the file and quietly debating what it means. But secrecy in the Martin world is fragile, and stories like this have a way of leaking no matter how carefully they are contained. It is about the tension between modern transparency and ancient royal tradition. In today's world, the public expects institutions to explain themselves openly and resolve controversies with clear answers. The monarchy, however, still operates according to principles that were established long before social media, 24-hour news cycles, and global public opinion became powerful forces. That collision between old rules and new expectations is what makes the Archie and Lilibet controversy so uniquely volatile. If the palace moves too aggressively to investigate, critics will accuse it of cruelty toward Harry's family. If it refuses to act, others will accuse it of protecting the institution at the expense of transparency. Every option carries consequences, and insiders say William is acutely aware that the way he handles this moment will become part of his legacy long before he ever sits on the throne. Meanwhile, the alleged Denial report continues to exist in that strange gray space between rumor and reality, quietly circulating among advisors while the public sees only fragments of the story. Whether it ultimately proves to be a misunderstanding, a procedural curiosity, or something far more significant remains completely unknown. What is certain, however, is that its arrival has already reopened conversations the palace believed had finally faded into history. And in the world of monarchy, where reputation is everything and every decision echoes across generations, even the smallest question mark can feel like a thunderclap. For now, the palace doors remain closed, the discussions remain private, and Prince William remains at the center of a controversy he never asked to inherit but cannot simply ignore. Because when it comes to the royal bloodline, silence may delay a storm, but it rarely stops one.